Well, I hope it's recorded. Yeah, we'll read it line by line and then I'll read the thought. Yeah, please repeat after me. Amanitvam adamhitvam.
Amanitvam adamhitvam.
Ahimsak shantirarjavam.
Ahimsak shantirarjavam.
Acharyopasanam shocham.
Acharyopasanam shocham.
Stharyam atma vinigraha.
Stharyam atma vinigraha.
Indriyartheshu vairagyam.
Indriyartheshu vairagyam.
Anahankara evacha.
Anahankara evacha.
Janma mrityu jara vyadhi.
Janma mrityu jara vyadhi.
Dukha doshanu darshanam.
Dukha doshanu darshanam.
Asaktirana bhishvanga.
Asaktirana vishvanga.
Putradara grihadishu.
Putradara grihadishu.
Nityam cha samachittatvam.
Nityam cha samachittatvam.
Ishtanishtopapatishu.
Ishtanishto bhavattishu.
Mai chananya yogena.
Mai chananya yogena.
Bhaktiravyavicharini.
Bhaktiravyavicharini.
Vivikta desha sevitvam.
Vivikta desha sevitvam.
Aratir jana sangsadi.
Aratir jana samsadi.
Adhyatma jnana nityatvam.
Adhyatma jnana nityatvam.
Tattva jnanartha darshanam.
Tattva jnanartha darshanam.
Etat jnanam iti proktam.
Etat jnanam iti proktam.
Ajnanam yadatonyatha.
Ajnanam yadatonyatha.
Translation: humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be, is ignorance. Now the purport is several pages long, and I'm not going to read it now, although I recommend that you read it. I'll analyze some of these points. Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Shrishtam Manamapi Shatiputram Atra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupuring Maturim Goshamatim Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Matavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Guru Shiyataf Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivashakam Vitamscha. Bhagavad Gita is known as a presentation of spiritual knowledge. Generally, people consider there to be knowledge and belief. Knowledge is something that you can quantify, you can measure. Hare Krishna. Science is supposed to be that which is measurable, And we don't hear in Western discourse, discourse in the Western world, about spiritual knowledge is considered to be belief. But here, Krishna talks about Jnanam, and Srila Prabhupada often uses the term spiritual knowledge. In other words, it can be definitely known, but not by the quantifiable method. In fact, that whole method of thinking that we can know by the method of measuring is Maya. It's called Maya, illusion. Mapiyate anayate iti Maya. To the attempt to measure is called Maya. To think that we can measure everything. Krishna is immeasurable. That doesn't mean he's unknowable. He's knowable, but not through the measurable, not through the senses which can only deal with that which is measurable. So this is knowledge, Krishna declares. All these points which he has mentioned here are knowledge. Now, knowledge. These are prerequisites for attaining knowledge and symptoms of actual knowledge. In other words, just like to take the first one, humility. Unless one is humble, one cannot get knowledge. That's true in any field. Because if you're not humble, then you think you already know. Then how are you going to learn? In college, if you go and you have no respect for the subject or for the teacher, then you can't learn. If you think, well, I already know more than the teacher, then you can't learn. So humility is required. And humility is also a symptom of one who has gained knowledge. Vidya dadati vinayam. Vidya is more or less a synonym of jnana, knowledge. What is the result of it? What do we get from that? Vidya gives vinayam, which is also it means humility. It's a synonym of the word which Krishna uses here, amanitvam. Of course, as with most synonyms, there's some nuances, some subtle differences, but similar words. We find also elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna refers to the Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane. So Vidya Vinaya Sampanna Brahmana. A Brahmana is one who has knowledge and humility. So these are prerequisites to attaining knowledge and symptoms of knowledge. So let's go through them. We can also consider these in relation to the modern educational system, or what is in modern life considered knowledge. In modern life, knowledge is considered to be amassment of information. If you can learn a lot of things, and if one can put them all together and spew them out, that is considered to be a sign of an intelligent person. But the standard given here by Lord Krishna is something completely different. Srila Prabhupada he spoke a lot about education. He said our movement is an educational movement. Now, it's become standard in our movement to have courses, Bhakti Shastri courses, then Bhakti Vaibhav, and I guess eventually they'll get on to the Bhakti Vedanta and Bhakti Sarvabhauma. These were the standards, the levels of courses Srila Prabhupada gave. When Srila Prabhupada said that our movement is an educational movement, these courses, well, that was definitely within the definition, but it's not the whole definition. We shouldn't think that education just means formally sitting in a class and amassing information and taking some exam. Now I am a Bhakti Shastri. I know so much. But actually, in Vedic education, everything is education. It's all education. And there are prerequisites for that also. One has to rise early in the morning. There's no meaning to... One cannot be considered an actually learned person if he has the habit of sleeping until 9 o'clock in the morning, or even 7 o'clock in the morning, for that matter. That means that the knowledge, it's book knowledge. There's a great difference between book knowledge and realized knowledge. And one who is realized, he acts in the manner of a learned person. We find earlier in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked Krishna, Stita pragyasya ka bhasha samadhi stasya keshava stitati kim prabhasheta kim asita vrajeta kim. How does a person fixed in intelligence, how does he speak? He's samadhi stita. He's fixed in samadhi, in a spiritual state. And how does he interact with the world? And how does he speak? How does he walk? How does he discuss? How does he sit? Is he some kind of completely different being? And again, Krishna, he prajahati yada kamam. He explains that one who is withdrawn from material desire, that it's not simply a matter of a massive. Who is an intelligent person? Who is one fixed in knowledge? It's not just a matter of being able to solve some crossword puzzles or to be a chess champion or a rocket scientist. But one who's withdrawn from sense gratification. So this is reflected in the character. Srila Prabhupada said our movement is an educational movement. Everything that one undertakes and does in this movement is meant for education. And as Srila Prabhupada often said, education is meant for forming character. It's not the most important thing to learn lots of information, but that should be reflected in one's character. One of our godbrothers, of course he's an old man now, but he attended Oxford University. It was Oxford. Oxford or Cambridge. Oxford University many years ago. And at the introduction, when all the students came, what's that called? Valedictory? Was that at the end? I can't remember. Didn't go to Oxford. So the professor told all the incoming students, he said, the most important thing you have to learn at Oxford University, highly prestigious institution of education, that the most important thing is not to get a degree. He said you can get through life without a degree, but the most important thing is to learn how to hold your drink. If you say that in India still, they mostly don't know what you mean. But of course, nowadays, kids at 12 years old already learn that, so what do they need to go to Oxford University for? They're already graduates in intoxication. Hold your drink means you can drink 5 liters of Heineken or whatever the popular beer is around. No, that's Danish, you know. Anyway, whatever. 5 liters of beer and still be able to walk to the toilet. And not just dribble it wherever you are. So this is considered, that's an important social function of a civilized person at Oxford University. So he said, you can get through life without a degree, but you can't get through without being able to hold your drink. You see, character formation. But that's a different outlook on what the character should be. So here we find in Bhagavad Gita Lord Krishna describing the character of a person who has knowledge. Knowledge, of course, that culminates in Vedaisya sarve rahameva vedyaha. The object of knowledge in all the Vedas, which means knowledge, is Krishna. So Krishna, he is Param Brahma. We find also, this is stated by Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. Brahma janatiti brahmana. One who's a brahmana means not someone who happens to be born in a certain family. On the plane coming from Bombay last night, there was S. Sharma was the female assistant. What do they call that? Hostesses. Air hostess, serving meat and wine, and she's Brahmin. Yeah. Now, this is not the Brahmin that described in Shastra. Vidya vinaya sampanna brahmana. Brahmana brahmatit janatiti brahma. Brahma janatiti brahmana. One who knows Brahma, the spiritual, such a person is a Brahmana. So Krishna is Param Brahma. He is the Supreme Brahman. So to know him, one requires to be pure. Krishna is Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhava. He is the Supreme Pure. To know him is not possible if one is eating meat and drinking wine. Or even if one is eating meat and drinking wine, one may be superficially very intelligent. There are very intelligent people in this country, no doubt. You don't have to tell the Germans that. They already know it very well. But one may be an intelligent meat eater and beer drinker, but that is not the intelligence by which one can understand the absolute truth. That begins with humility. So, the very concept that one should be humble is almost totally absent from the modern way of life. In fact, if one is very proud, that is considered a sign of someone, self-confidence, personality development. Someone is very proud. This is a symptom of the demoniac person. Damba, Darpa, Abhimana. These are the very amanitvam, adhambitvam. These are the first two symptoms of knowledge. Humility and pridelessness, which are again almost synonyms. But there's no... Well, amanitvam, as Prabhupada says, he describes here, humility means not wanting to be honored by others. There are specific meanings. No, and then adambitvam means to be bereft of the pride of thinking oneself better than others. So there's similar words. But, that's absent in the modern education. The modern education is in an exploitive society, how to, one who is successful is expert at being exploiting others and not being exploited by others, but they cheated you. You're all being exploited. It's the whole society. The whole education is meant for exploitation. Whereas in Vedic society means to become free of the tendency toward exploitation. The whole system of dharma, the varnashram dharma, is to become free from the tendency to exploit. In the Western world, India is portrayed as being one of the main symptoms of India, along with poverty, the stupidity of worshipping cows, and then the other prime symptom by which India is known is the caste system. So India has bad PR in the West. But the caste system is a perverted reflection of the actual varnashram dharma, which is meant for regulating society in such a way that there's cooperation, and so that there should not be exploitation. Whereas the caste system is the perverted reflection of that, in which cooperation is enforced and people take a superior position not to serve others but to exploit them. Brahmana has a superior position in the varnashram system, highly exalted position. But he's highly exalted because amanidvam, adhamvidvam, because he's humble and prideless and simply wants to serve others, therefore he's so exalted. But if he takes the exalted position without the humility and pridelessness, then the whole system breaks down, and the whole purpose, which is to get free from the spirit of exploitation which characterizes this material world, which characterizes especially the demoniac attitude, that is lost. And instead of being a godly system, it becomes a demoniac system. That's why we find that Srila Prabhupada often spoke of the necessity to establish Daiva Varnashram, godly Varnashram, as opposed to Asuric Varnashram, which is the perverted reflection of this. So humility and pridelessness, this is inculcated in the Vedic system of education by the brahmachari, will beg on behalf of the Guru on a daily basis, even if he's from a very rich family, a very exalted family, even if he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna himself also became a brahmachari, Krishna and Balaram. And they begged some alms, please give us, Bhavati Bhiksham Dehi, give us some alms. That is supposed to, or it has the effect of inculcating humility. However great a family one may come from, if he has to beg, that inculcates humility. Now there's a difference between humility and humiliation. Most people would think in the modern age that, well, to beg is humiliating. But the begging of a brahmachari is humbling in a positive sense, in a required sense. Humiliation means one has a very big ego and one wants to be egoistic, but your ego is smashed and you feel depressed because you want to be egoistic. But humility means your ego is smashed and you welcome that. Very good. That requires to be smashed. So if one has no motive to be humble, then when the ego is smashed, then he'll feel humiliated. So it's very, the whole understanding of the guru-disciple relationship is very difficult for people who are raised in this demoniac society to even begin to understand, because the whole idea is that, well, everyone has their rights and their freedom, and everyone should have the right to develop their own egoism to the ultimate extent, and the whole idea that one should become humble is totally absent from the moment of birth up to the time of death. So it's very, very difficult actually to be Krishna conscious, or to even to be a human being of any character, because unless one is trained in these godly characteristics, then the ego will run wild. This character training means from the beginning the brahmachari is trained how to become humble. Or the girl at home, there's not exactly a brahmacharini, but the girl at home is trained to serve, to be humble, but this is considered a crime in the modern world if anyone's trained to become humble. It's actually considered an affront on humanity if anyone's trained to become, isn't it? They say it's like against human rights and everyone should be, isn't it? They say that. And everyone should have equal rights to be as puffed up as possible. So, and they'll make a lawsuit against you and put you in prison if you say something like, well, women should be submissive. And women should be, everyone should be submissive. Actually. So, it's a very messed up society. Amanitvam adambhitvam. Humility and prideless. Just the opposite of the demoniac qualities. Dambha, darpa, abhimana. The demoniac qualities are described by Lord Krishna. Again, the three almost synonyms. Dambha, darpa, abhiman, pride, arrogance, conceit. Srila Prabhupada translates these, they're all very similar. So, amanitvam adambhitvam ahimsa, this famous word, it's almost become part of the Western lexicon, hasn't it now? Ahimsa. It's from Buddhism. This rascal Dalai Lama talks about peace and eats veal and all kinds of meat. And such a rascal. Such a disservice people do. When they talk of ahimsa and then they're every day eating ducks and chickens and all kinds of gourmet meats. So, ahimsa, non-violence. Interesting that Krishna speaks of non-violence while inciting Arjuna to fight. How is that? Prabhupada often spoke against the nonsense non-violence. And he spoke against Mahatma Gandhi for promoting non-violence. Gandhi would daily speak on Bhagavad Gita, and then one of his big principles was non-violence. And Prabhupada says this is ridiculous because violence, total ahimsa within this world, it's not possible. That the very role of a kshatriya is to be violent. And that was Krishna's whole point to Arjuna. That to be non-violent in a situation that requires violence will necessarily bring more violence. And, that actually happened in the case of Gandhi. He said, well, we should be fair to the Pakistan, and all the money and the weapons were in Delhi. So we should be fair to them, give them their due quota of weapons and money. So they did, and the first thing they did, attacked India. So he caused more violence by his fairness. And he himself, what was the practical point? He himself, as Prabhupada said, he got shot. So you would say it's not a practical philosophy. So, then why is Krishna speaking about ahimsa? Well, actually this is qualified in Srimad Bhagavatam, in Lord Kapila Dev's teachings. Nati hingsrena, this term is used. Excessive violence, more than is required. That should not be employed. The attitude should be of not wanting to do any harm to others. That should be the attitude. Adveshta sarava bhutanam maitra karuna evacha. The attitude to all living beings should be of not hating anyone. One should be friendly and merciful to all. But sometimes that friendliness and mercifulness takes the form of violence, which may seem very strange. But just like a doctor, he may, to benefit the patient, may cause them pain, cutting. It seems like violence, but applied in an intelligent and knowledgeable way, can be for the benefit of others. Similarly, in Vedic culture, the king, he personally performs the act of decapitation of a person, of a murderer, a person who, according to Manu, should be punished in that way. But that is an act of non-violence. How is that an act of non-violence? It's violence, but it's non-violent in the sense that it's performed for the benefit of that person and of everyone else. Because if he's not punished in that way, he has to suffer severely sinful reactions. And society becomes full of, unless there is this severe punishment, again in the modern age, this is not much appreciated in countries like Germany, where they have the idea is that, well, give them a chance. But the Vedic culture is, forgiveness is there, but it can be there, but there's also severe punishment. And if there's strictness, then the good citizens, they shouldn't be worried about that. But if one is a criminal, then they are forcibly restrained. So, ahimsa means non-violence, then has to be understood in context. Because in this world, there are bad people, and they need to be restrained by force. A police force is required. Without that, as we see, sometimes in some countries the police go on strike, and then there's immediate looting, crime. That means that people are not doing that only because they're afraid of the police. It's the threat of force, of violence, which keeps these bad people in check. So violence is required, but an attitude of wanting to harm others, simply out of bad feeling, that is very sinful. Arjuna, he had the attitude that he didn't want to hurt any. Arjuna, he wasn't against fighting per se. He didn't want to fight. He'd fought so many fights. He'd been fighting all his life. He wasn't against fighting. But he wanted to know if he would not fight unless he accepted and understood that it was on dharmic principles. He was not just some kind of terrorist or hooligan that went around killing people whimsically, but it was a considered action in every case. The general attitude is one of ahimsa. Shanti, tolerance. Again, in the modern age, where's I'm supposed to be comparing all this with the modern age. Non-violence. Yeah, we live in a very violent culture, don't we? We don't even see that. The slaughterhouses are kept far away. The millions of abortions, we don't hear the scream of the baby as they're aborted. It's all very nicely packaged. You can go in the supermarket and buy a packet of steak or veal. It's all nicely packaged, very neat and clean. We don't see the violence, but the whole society is running on violence. Violence to the earth. Exploitation. And shanti, tolerance. That's also explained in Bhagavad Gita. Matra sparshastu konteya shitoshna sukha dukha daha agama payano nityas tang satiksha svadhara. One should tolerate great heat, great cold. As far as possible, one should tolerate. In the modern age, people if it gets a little hot, they need a fan or air conditioning. If it gets cold, they need heating, hot water, and so much arrangement just to make everything pleasant in all respects. But again, in the brahmachari, gurukul, education system, they're taught to tolerate, take a little disturbance. Don't try to make life too soft and too comfortable. This material comfort and spiritual realization don't go together very well. If one is always looking for material comfort, then He'll be distracted by that, always on the bodily platform. So one should be able to take some discomfort. And then you don't even feel it, actually. If we're always used to adjusting the temperature just as we like it, everything should be just as I like it, then we become disturbed. If there's any little disturbance, if the electricity goes off in this country, it doesn't go off. But if it does go off, then it's a big disturbance. Oh, now what happened? I can't turn on my TV and can't turn on my air conditioner. It's a major disturbance. But in traditional society, of course, there was no. People had to live simply. And tolerance of not only physical disturbances, but we have a manitva, so what is that? One should be tolerant of people insulting us. All this tolerance. That's also a symptom of detachment. That one is not so much attached. That what is this situation? All material life means always trying to adjust the situation to try to make it suitable for my sense enjoyment. And everything should be just adjusted nicely so I can be happy. Everything. So we spend all our energy trying to make everything just as we like it. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjana. What is nice for my material sense gratification, I should try and arrange that. And what is opposing that, I should try and adjust that. But in this way, our whole purpose of life, we get distracted. Instead, that it's a little hot, a little cold, whatever it is, a little disturbance, this, that, but we have to concentrate on spiritual activities, not just spending our whole energy trying to make everything very comfortable, very pleasing for the senses. That doesn't mean that we don't unnecessarily make conditions uncomfortable for ourselves. And if there is a fan, we could use it. But it's not that we become dependent upon that. And all our energy goes into trying to make some arrangement so that we can be materially comfortable or mentally comfortable. We find in the modern age people have so much depression and hypertension, stress, this, that, the other. They don't feel mentally comfortable. But one who can tolerate, then all right, there's different situations, and just accept it. We have to go on with our spiritual practices. Now it's warm, and after a few months it'll be cold. But anyway, whatever the situation, we have to go on with our chanting, service to Krishna, all these. Sometimes we're sick, still we have to go on as best we're able. And this is tolerance. But people in the modern age, very little tolerance level. Last time I was here in Munich, I was just waiting, just where we came out of your apartment, and there's the underground garage, the basement garage. So I was standing on the side of the road waiting. I think you were bringing the car, and someone had opened this garage and they were coming up. Some young woman going to work in her car, and I happened to be standing in front of her, and I wasn't aware of that. And I turned around, and she popped the horn, and look on her face like I committed a major crime, because I was standing in her passageway, and she lost about 3 seconds, and like a look of total distress and disgust, and I thought, this is a little extreme. You can't tolerate I was a little slow in getting out of the way, I must admit. But I didn't immediately understand that I should jump out of the way and probably offer obeisances to her as she drove past. But just so disturbed over such a small thing, because they have important things to do. I have to go to work. lack of tolerance, then the mind is always disturbed, and how can there be spiritual realization? Arjavam, simplicity. This is absolutely unknown in the modern world, either physical or mental simplicity. Life is very complex, and people's whole mentality is very complex. Better to live simply and be mentally simple also. Mentally simple means we're not making all kinds of different. So many people come and there's so many mental hang-ups and go on telling this and that. So many things on their mind and all very complex. No need for any of this. Chief Krishna Das Abhishas Kale Ta Ardukanai. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives all the solutions to everything in material life. Just understand you're an eternal servant of Krishna, bas, finished. You don't need to understand anything else. Very simple. Life is very complex. You just understand. You're a servant of Krishna. Everything in this world is temporary. There's no need to get all caught up. This person's my enemy. They did this to me, and then he said this, and then I said that, and he said this, and then he made a phone call, and then I did. Then he called his friend, and he came over and beat me, and then I called my friend, and then it's so complex. And you don't know what's going on. Just like look at all these political situations. Yeah. What exactly is America and their allies doing in Afghanistan? And you can analyze this situation, and it's extremely complex. Everything in the way is extremely complex. This group supporting this one, and then they change and they support another one, and you're not sure whether on this side or that side. And anyway, just kill them all, and it just becomes extremely complicated. Narupa masyeha tatopa labhyate na chantana adena cha sampratishto ashvatamena suvirudamu sangashastrena durena chitta. This material world is extremely complex, like a banyan tree. Krishna gives the example. It's extremely complex. You can't find where's the beginning or the end, and everything's tangled up. And what are you going to do? Just cut it. You try and untangle everything. And just like people, they say, well, I have this psychological problem, and this happened in my childhood, and then my father shouted at me, and then my mother's fourth husband, he always used to look at me in this funny way, and you try and sort it all out and get this treatment and hypnotic regression, and it goes on, and then you go back to a previous life, and that life's problems, there's not enough in one life. It just goes on and on and on. Just forget it all. You're a servant of Krishna, serve Krishna, all problems are finished. Otherwise there's no end. You can't sort it out. The more you try to sort it out, the more entangled you become. You won't sort it out. There's no end. The only thing is just to accept this is simplicity. Just accept, I'm a servant of Krishna, I have to serve Krishna. Very simple. This should be inculcated. This is education. This is knowledge. We think that knowledge becomes more and more complex. But that's not knowledge. That's complex ignorance, that's all. Simply amassing more and more information is not knowledge. Real knowledge means to come to the point. The point is that we are eternal servants of Krishna. If you know that, that is knowledge. And if we don't know that, then we're simply amassing more and more ignorance. Like a donkey gets more and more on his back, and you think, what a great donkey. But he's a donkey. And he's just carrying loads which have no benefit for you. So we carry huge amounts of information and all these different ideas, and we think, we're becoming very advanced, but we're just donkeys, that's all. It should be simple. Throw off the loads, surrender to Krishna. That is simplicity. Simplicity in life also. Why make life complex? As Prabhupada said, he always uses this as an example, that they made this electric razor. And you have to always change the parts, change the batteries. They said that previously, you see, you get one blacksmith makes a razor for life. You use it your whole life. That's finished. Now you get this just a straight blade. That's all. You sharpen it on some leather. That's it. But now they made electric toothbrushes and just unnecessary complex society. So live simply. Simplicity means also don't accumulate more than we need. That's another symptom of the modern society. Go in people's houses and they open the cupboard, it's full of all this junk. They bought something and then they just put it in the cupboard. And they do that every time they go out to shop. They buy something and then they use it and they think, well, maybe I'll use it later, and they stick it in the cupboard and they have whole rooms full of all kinds of toys and gadgets and all kinds of things. 25 pairs of shoes, 200 saris, so many. There's so many lipsticks and body lotions and something. What is it? Something to put on the face and something to take it off your face. You see, the whole bathroom's filled, and it probably. The whole thing probably costs about 500 euros or something. And none of it's needed. And if you need something for, it gets, skin gets dry in the winter, and it's cold. So you can use some mustard oil like that. Simple thing. Otherwise, it's all unnecessarily complex. Society. Live simply. Don't accumulate more than we need. Shocham, cleanliness. Internal cleanliness and external cleanliness. Not known in the modern world. Cleanliness. As one of the first things Prabhupada noted when he came to the Western world is how people, they have the habit, after passing stool, of smearing the stool around on their backside with some paper and then pulling up their pants, and some of them might wash their hands afterward, and that's it. And it might be a week later that they bathe. This is not clean. They used to have the system of the whole family taking a bath once a week. Right? You have the bathtub. I don't know if in German, but in English. And first the father takes a bath, and then in the same water, the mother takes a bath, and then the kids one by one, on the same water. Once a week, or 2 weeks. Every week. Usually 2 weeks. It's like a family event, taking a bath. No cleanliness. And what to speak, there's no concept of mental cleanliness. There's absolutely no idea whatsoever that the mind should be clean. No idea. The mind should be sharp. You should be good at, when someone says something, you can fire something back at them, and you can do your job very efficiently and enjoy life. But cleanliness of the mind, I never heard of such a thing. Then what next? Stharyam, yes, steadfastness. This means steadfastness in spiritual realization. Otherwise, people may be steadfast, but for something completely useless. That's like people, they'll train, they spend their whole childhood and youth training to be a gymnast, so they can win an Olympic gold. And they spend 15 years training to be a gymnast, and then they're not even accepted in the team, in the Olympic team. Or they have to train so hard, and what's the use? It's useless endeavor. So steadfastness is a very good quality. We can learn that even from the spider. There's a famous story. It's probably not famous in Germany, but there was a Scottish king called Robert the Bruce, who was defeated several times. You heard it in America? You were in England long enough to hear it also. So he was defeated several times by the English, the Scottish king. And then one time he had just been defeated and he was sitting in a cave hiding from the British, and he saw a spider. And the spider kept on falling down, but he'd keep on trying to get up, and eventually, after many, many tries, he got up and then he made his web. And then Robert the Bruce got determination. Yeah, I failed so many times, but let me try again. And then he went out and he won the battle at last. So steadfastness. He didn't give up because he was defeated a few times. So that's required in spiritual life. Also, nothing good, even in the material world. Of course, there is nothing good in the material world, but even that which is considered good in material life, nothing good can be achieved without sticking to the goal, through all difficulties. There are many difficulties, especially in the modern age, full of difficulties. So many difficulties. I see so many people here, like myself, almost everyone in this room is not from Germany. That means they found that in their own country, there was so many difficulties that they thought, I have to go to another country. I can be better off in another place. So this is unnatural, actually. Why should it be like that? But that's the modern world. And then you come here and you find that, okay, we got free from one set of difficulties, but then we have another set of difficulties. Here we're physically more comfortable amidst our difficulties. And we earn more than we did in our previous set of difficulties. But then we have other difficulties also. Just like when you come here, you have to learn the language. Although there's a veneer of racial tolerance, actually they hate you. You're separated from your family, it's different culture, and there are so many difficulties. It's damn cold here for people coming from India. Of course not now, it's just as warm as India. But the winter is horribly cold and long. So there are difficulties. In material life, in spiritual life, there are also difficulties, but one should remain steadfast. Here comes another term or concept that is absolutely unknown of in the modern age. Atma vinigraha, self-control. Who on earth is going to teach you that? That's against the whole, in modern society, that's considered deviant behavior. Because everyone's supposed to be indulgent and work hard to earn money to buy lots of things. But if you're self-controlled and you don't want to buy the latest this, that, or iPod, iPhone, whatever it is. It's always something for me. If you don't want to buy it, then there's something wrong with you. You didn't join the queue of 20 million people wanting to get the latest model. You already have one, but the latest model is coming out and it's got some more gadgets and some more buttons, and you can't live without it. So, but one who is self-controlled, then what is it? He's not. It's just the opposite of self-indulgent. Self-control means that there's so much inducement to enjoy the senses, but he's not concerned. Actually, it's very easy to be self-controlled if one is in Krishna consciousness. One simply makes the sankalpa, the determination that I will only do what is favorable for advancing Krishna consciousness. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjana. I will give up that which is against Krishna consciousness. And it becomes very easy. You go past the ice cream shop. How many flavors? What is it? 61? 71? Baskin Robbins? How many? 51. Only 51. Anyway, 51's a lot. And then you think, 51. Vanilla. Chocolate. This. That. And then immediately the mind is disturbed. But if one has made the determination, I will only do what is favorable to Krishna, then you just go, it doesn't make any difference. It could be any other building. It's just nothing there for me. There's no attraction. That's all. Nothing to do with it. Self-control becomes very easy. But it's not what modern education turns us into a slavering idiot who's just they advertise it and then you feel, I have to buy it. I have to get an iPod. I have to get the latest computer. I have to go on holiday to, where do they all go to from Germany? Croatia. Spain. I have to sit on the beach with 200,000 other Germans. There's no room for us to move. Nowhere to go, and then drive all the way back. They don't drive all the way to Spain, that's too far. They fly. They fly in. So, I have to enjoy myself. Come on, it's Friday night. Go to the bar. Indulge, spend all your money that you work for all week. No need. Self-control. No need. And if there's self-control, no need, then we don't have to work hard. And then there's no more Germany. Because Germany means work hard, earn money, spend money. So self-control is definitely not wanted in the modern society. But that is required for advancement in spiritual life. Unless there's self-control, there's absolutely no question of advancement in spiritual life. That must be there. We have to follow some rules. It's not like in the modern age these rascals say, I'm spiritual but I'm not religious. I'm just imagining. I feel very spiritual. I just feel so spiritual. But there's no system of purification. There must be rules and regulations to follow. Rules and regulations. What are they? Rules and regulations. We just love Krishna, that's all. We don't follow all these rules and regulations. But then this attitude is the same as the gross materialist who's just self-indulgent. This idea that we don't follow any rules and regulations, it's not spiritual advancement. It's just a sham. It means one's not serious at all. There must be rules and regulations. And when we say that there are no rules and regulations in advanced devotee, that means that he doesn't need to think about it, he automatically follows them. That's it. So self-control is there. Then indriyarteshu vairagyam. These are all connected. Renunciation of the objects of the senses. They're all connected. This Atma Vinigraha, self-control, then renunciation of the objects of the senses. This is Etat Jnanam, Krishna says. This is knowledge. Even to know that we should do this. Who is teaching this? This is required to be taught. But it's such a pitiable position that in the name of religion or spiritual life, people don't like to teach this because people they're raised in a culture which is full of sense indulgence, which is actually completely destructive to the actual purpose of life, which is to become spiritually realized. But people are raised in this indulgent culture, and therefore, if someone comes and tells them, we need to be self-controlled, we need to follow rules and regulations of spiritual life, and they think, that sounds horrible. Or if someone says, you just feel spiritual and be spiritual and smile and be nice, be good, and be tolerant to others and don't criticize anyone and people say, very nice, very spiritual. And if we say, no, there's a difference between self-indulgence, even in the name of spirituality, and actual spiritual life, which is based on indriyarteshu vairagyam. It begins with becoming detached from the objects of the senses. Don't like this. I don't like this. Everything is measured by what I like and what I don't like. But jnana, one has to acquire knowledge from going to the guru and being trained and accepting that I don't know. It begins with humility. I don't know. I need to be taught. I need to be trained. But gurus are also the rascal type. And they think, well, if I have lots of followers, then it'll be nice and they'll all praise me and give me lots of money and I'll become popular and famous anyway, why should I tell them all these things they don't like to hear? Make people happy. Tell them that, you can do whatever you like and just, say Om and smile. That's all. And I'll give you some mantras and you can feel spiritual. They're all cheating. But they become such people, if they're good showmen, they become very popular. There are so many in India, in the West. They always show this Shri, typical, smiling with a beard and talking all vague things. Nothing very specific. You see, you have to feel very spiritual. But if we tell that you feel the energy within yourself, then you realize that actually I am everything. Oh, it's very profound. But it's nonsense. You're not everything. People like to hear, oh yeah, I am everything. Oh yeah, very good. Very good guru. But then if you self-control, control the mind, control the senses, don't eat whatever you like, don't do whatever you like. Rules and regulations. What is this? They don't like it. And then, I don't like it, finished, thrown out. That is the standard by which everything is to be judged. Do I like it or do I not like it? But by this we remain on the animal platform. The animal has no discrimination. Is there something I like? Here's some food. Okay, I'll eat it. That's all. An animal cannot go beyond the level of I like, I don't like. A human being can. This is knowledge. An animal cannot develop knowledge. Vairagyam anahankara eva cha. Eva, certainly, is emphasized. No, one should be free of ahankara. That which, by which one thinks in terms of I, me, and mine. One should, just like these bogus gurus say, you are everything. Oh, yes. But then, you are, or we are, all of us, we are not infinite. We are infinitesimal. Just the opposite. We are very small, very tiny. This should be understood. Free of ahankar, of thinking in terms of I, myself. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha doshanu darshanam. Perceptions of the evil, the dosha, the fault of birth, death, old age and disease. The world is very nice, is it not? Everything's very nice. The world is very nice. It's sunny, there are trees, there are cars, everything's very nice, everything's wonderful. But there's some problems. Generally we like to think, well, the world's nice. If I get some facility to enjoy this world, then it's very nice. But there are some problems which no one can avoid. Birth, death, old age and disease. We don't see this unless we see it, but we don't see it unless we're taught to see it. We're so blind we don't see it. We see pasha napi na pashati. We see but we don't see. We see it but we think, well, okay. Life goes on. Someone died. Okay, he died. Someone else died. Okay, he died. I will have to die. Yeah, just some. Not now. It's always not now. You see, old men making plans. What I'm going to do in the next 10 years. They're already 80 years old. And what makes you think I'm going to live another 10 years? So, janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkha. This is miserable. Unless we're trained, we can't. This is the most basic thing, but we can't even see that unless we're trained. Therefore, we require to be trained. No education like this anywhere, in any school, college, or university. Therefore, it's a most foolish civilization, which just goes on the principle that we shall be happy in this world without seeing the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. Most foolish civilization. And they're so proud. Oh, so great country, Germany, America, Britain, great countries, leading the world. Completely foolish civilization. Cats and dogs. They have a cat or a dog, if we cannot speak to them any philosophy, we tell them, you have to die. How can you communicate that to a dog? You cannot. And to most human beings in the modern world, the necessity of becoming free from birth and death, you can't communicate it to them. Therefore, they are simply sophisticated cats and dogs. They haven't actually come to the human platform of intelligence, although they may be apparently very intelligent. But that is not intelligence, that is not knowledge. Asaktirana Vishvanga Putra Dara Grihadishu. Not being attached to freedom from entanglement. Oh, Prabhupada separates them here. Asakti, detachment. And then specifically, anabhishvanga, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest. Well, that's there also in modern society, but that's in a different way. People don't even get entangled with children, wife, home, and the rest because they're totally irresponsible. But according to civilized human society, people have families. They look after their family. They have their roles as husbands and fathers, mothers and wives, children. There are roles to be played. This is civilized life. In the modern age, there's no attachment to these things because people, again, are living like cats and dogs. The dog impregnates a bitch and then goes away, and the bitch has children, and next time it'll be some other dog. That's all. So it's like that in modern life. So civilized life means that a man takes responsibility for the wife submits herself to the husband, and they conjointly raise a family. But, Krishna says here, even though that situation is one in which attachment is liable to be very strong, but one should cultivate not being attached, because that is not a permanent situation. So one should be responsible, but not attached. It's a great art, how to do that. That doesn't mean that one should be cold, not affectionate toward family members, but there should be an underlying sense of understanding that this is all temporary, and that my real relationship is with Krishna. Again, no one's going to teach this. That this is actually very basic knowledge. Bhagavad Gita is here. What Krishna is speaking is very basic knowledge of what is knowledge, but we won't find anything even approaching this in the modern educational system. They're so blind, the whole society is so blind as to the actual purpose and values of life. So, even-mindedness, samachittattvam, nityam cha samachittattvam ishtanishtopapatishu. One should remain equal-minded, in equilibrium, even whether one gets something pleasant or unpleasant. This is a repeated theme in Bhagavad Gita. Sukhe dukhe same kritva. That one should, what is that? Dukheshvan udvignam mana. Sukheshu vigata spriha. One should not be distressed even in the midst of cause of disturbance, or even if you get something which can bring material happiness. Someone gives you €1,000,000. But one remains even-minded, understanding that, well, I don't really have any real relationship with this distress or this happiness. It's nothing to do with me, actually. It's just another phase of the material samsara, the churning of the ocean. And I happen to be in this spot, in this time, in which there's some difficulty for my body and mind, but it's not. I really have nothing to do with this. Or I happen to be in this particular situation where I got €1,000,000 unexpectedly. But again, it's nothing really to do with me. So one is neither disturbed in distress nor elated in happiness. It just remains the same, that's all. And goes on with this service to Krishna. Of course, it's a lot easier to say than to do. But this is knowledge. We should know what that is. Otherwise, we remain ignorant. We have to, this cultivation, we have to cultivate this knowledge. So, next one. Then the most important part of knowledge is Maicha-nanya yogena bhakti-ravya-vicharini. Being translate this. Constant and unalloyed devotion to me. This is the essence of all knowledge. This is the position of the jiva, to be constantly and unswervingly devoted to Krishna. This is the essence of all knowledge. But there are characteristics of that also. So if someone, they're a devotee of Krishna, they should exhibit all these qualities also. All the other qualities can be said to be sub-characteristics of the central characteristic, which is unalloyed and constant devotion to Krishna. Then, Vivikta Desha Sevidvam, aspiring to live in a solitary place. One should not want to. Solitary means, as is described in the next statement, Arati Jana Sangsati. One should not be attached to the people in general. One shouldn't identify, I am a German, I am an Indian, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Brahmana. One shouldn't identify with this. One should desire to live separately from materialistic people and to associate with them. Again, it doesn't mean that one hates them, but one should associate with people who can help one in cultivation of spiritual life. Adhyatma jnana nityatvam. Prabhupada translates this, accepting the importance of self-realization. Adhyatma jnana nityatvam tattva jnanartha darshanam. And philosophical search for the absolute truth. Again, this is totally absent in modern education, but is the essence of actual education. Whatever else we may learn, whether it's getting a university degree, holding our drink, or whether we become an expert engineer or mathematician or doctor or whatever we may be, but the ultimate point of knowledge is to accept the importance of self-realization and a philosophical search for the absolute truth. That is required. Bhakti is not just some sentiment, but there should be understanding. Krishna teaches Arjuna about the various tattvas. What is Ishvara, the supreme controller? Who is the jiva, the infinitesimal servant of Krishna? And then in this material world, how kala, time, is operating. Prakriti, the nature, material nature, and spiritual nature also. And karma, how all this goes. Krishna teaches all these things so that we can be actually knowledgeable and fixed in devotional service. So, that's a quick overview of what Krishna describes to be knowledge and how it is distinguished, quite completely different from what is considered knowledge in the modern age. Quite different. Don't be proud. MSc, PhD, all this. It's just a certificate of our sophisticated ignorance, that's all. And the fact that we think that it's important testifies to our greater ignorance. If one has it and realizes that it's of no actual value, then one can be said to be somewhat knowledgeable. But if one has it and one thinks that one's actually better for having it, instead of realizing, as Thakur Bhaktivinoda says, that Jaro Vidya Jato Maya Bhaibhav Tomar Bhajane Badha Moha Janame Nitya Samsare Jeev Ke Kare Gadha. Unless he understands that this material knowledge is simply a display of Maya, of illusion, and it's an obstacle in devotional service to Krishna. In this material world where everything is temporary, it simply increases the illusion. It doesn't decrease the illusion. By learning more and more about this illusory world, it doesn't decrease the illusion, it increases the illusion, unless we learn it from the Krishna conscious perspective. So this materialistic knowledge makes the jiva into an ass. That's Thakur Bhaktivinoda's conclusion. Just like the ass carries so many things which are no use to him, so we carry all kinds of useless information. It's actually no use to us in the ultimate sense whatsoever. So this is knowledge. Etat jnanam iti proktam, Krishna says. This is knowledge. I've spoken of it. So this is required to be cultivated. So if there's any question about this or comment, yeah, I'll take Mahaduti Prabhu as the senior most here. Do we have this cordless mic or anything? No.
Oh, it's okay, I got it.
Yeah, all right, but okay.
In the beginning of your lecture, you were talking also about knowledge, and I was thinking about these two words, jnana and vijnana.
Yeah.
Now, in the 6th chapter, Prabhupada translates jnana as acquired knowledge and vijnana as realized knowledge.
Yeah.
And in the 18th chapter, the qualities of the Brahman, he defines jnana as knowledge, but then vijnana as wisdom.
Yeah, and then again, jnana and vijnana are described as knowledge of the phenomenal and the numinous. Again, in that he describes as the material knowledge and spiritual knowledge. So in different contexts.
Yeah, but in general, it seems that, also in a purport, I think it's in the 6th chapter where Prabhupada seems to, not always, but often, jnana seems to mean book knowledge.
Yeah.
Whereas vijnana means the applied.
Prabhupada generally translates jnana, or often translates jnana as book knowledge and vijnana as realized knowledge.
Realized knowledge, yeah. So,
but here, Krishna defines jnana very clearly in opposition to. He doesn't say it's learning the Vedas, not even learning the Vedas, but it's the realization.
That's true. Yeah.
So these words jnana, vijnana, they can be used as synonyms, or vijnana can be a special state of jnana. We have to see the context, and different acharyas will give different understandings of that also.
Okay, but the point I'm getting at is that it's related. Is that when we're studying Prabhupada's books, okay, like for instance, you brought up about these courses, Bhakti Shastra.
Yeah.
Okay, so other senior devotees in ISKCON have also mentioned that the real thing is not just to acquire information, even if it's spiritual information, but to change the character.
Right.
Which obviously means realization.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, we have these 9 processes of devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. So, when we're reading Prabhupada's books, then the question comes up: are we just acquiring knowledge, like information, or is that also a kind of vijnana? Because when you hear transcendental knowledge, you should also be getting realization when you hear.
Yeah, so the question boils down to what you brought up at the end, when we're reading Prabhupada's books, and I guess that means also when we're studying Bhakti Shastri. Is it? Or not?
Yeah.
Is it a matter of, are we just acquiring knowledge, or is there realization? Well, a lot depends on our attitude in how we're doing it. If we're reading the books and thinking that there are people who read books with actually a demoniac intention to criticize them, and they don't get the fruit of studying the books. And maybe a devotee is thinking, I'm studying this to pass my Bhakti Shastra exam. But the real passing of the Bhakti Shastra exam is to be inspired by that knowledge and incorporate it in one's life and be inspired to preach it. I would think anyone who comes out of Bhakti Shastri course should be so inspired to want to share that knowledge with others. If not, then they haven't understood it actually. So, but the nature of Prabhupada's books and the way he writes them is that he doesn't at all write in, although they're very scholarly, he doesn't at all write in the armchair scholarly style. It's very much an urging to act and to surrender to Krishna. So one's attitude is there, but attitude will also come by association. The Bhakti Shastri course, a lot will depend on the teachers also, what is their attitude and what they're conveying. And despite egalitarian ideas in ISKCON today, as I see it, because we have to say that, it makes a lot of difference who your guru is also. Because the spirit that's given out in the teaching, if the disciple is at all being a disciple, then that the guru is very influential in the disciple's life. So the spirit that the guru gives out will also, as much as the disciple is a disciple and the guru is a guru, and it's not just some kind of official post or something to become a member of ISKCON, but it will influence also how the disciples understand. So that's
good answer.
Yeah. Okay. What's your question?
So I wanted to you give this example for like a donkey. When, for example, if you got too much knowledge, so it's just a burden, If
a donkey, if you get too much knowledge. Well, I didn't say if you get too much knowledge. There's no such thing as too much knowledge. If it's actual knowledge, there can't be too much of it. But if it's not actual knowledge, then any amount is too much.
I mean, so knowledge, for example, what is not.
And what is knowledge and what is not knowledge is not necessarily judged by the content, but it's judged by, here we're getting into like quantum science or something. It depends on the attitude of the observer. So generally we're told, I didn't listen to your question, which is considered rude, but because your question started off on a wrong premise, and it wouldn't have had any meaning anyway. So I'm just addressing the premise. So generally we're told, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Mayavadi Bhashya Shunle Hoy Sarvanash. One who hears the Mayavad explanations, his spiritual life is ruined. Jiva Goswami studied, many acharyas studied, but they didn't become spoiled. They studied with the aim of Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipano Sadharma Samstapaka, with the aim of establishing what is the actual fact. They studied the wrong thing, which generally is the cause of faith or understanding becoming spoiled. So, when a neophyte devotee or even the newspaper for that matter, a neophyte devotee may read the newspaper and say that, yeah, we got to support, we got to go and smash the Muslims, and they're all the problems in the world are caused by Muslims, and got to blow them up, and this and that, and someone else, an advanced devotee, may read the newspaper with a Krishna. Instead of reading what they want you to think, which is what the newspaper is, it's a propaganda vehicle, more or less. So, one can read from Krishna's perspective, from Shastric perspective. So the same thing can be studied by two persons, and it may be the same knowledge, what we from our materialistic perspective may be the same knowledge, but for one person it becomes a means for his entanglement in the material world. For another person it becomes another perspective by which they can distinguish between reality and illusion. So, what is knowledge? This is knowledge, Krishna says. He doesn't say it's this information or that information. Even spiritual information, he doesn't say. The spiritual information of Bhagavad Gita may be read by a person who doesn't get any spiritual benefit. He may learn the whole Bhagavad Gita, all the verses, and doesn't get any benefit out of it whatsoever. Because he didn't imbibe these qualities. Whereas someone else, he may not be very lucid in explaining, but he gets the essence. And he actually has the knowledge. So, what you're saying, I was trying to make the point, or trying to elaborate on what Krishna is saying. What is knowledge? But then again, if you use the term knowledge in terms of how it's conventionally understood, well, that means you didn't understand. The question, the whole purpose of what Krishna explains is knowledge. So, listen again, read the books again and again. Knowledge is not, or real knowledge is not simply a matter of acquiring information or even being able to link it up in various ways and come up with different theories. That's considered to be intelligence. And it is a kind of intelligence, but the real intelligence is how to distinguish reality from illusion. That's in the beginning of Bhagavatam. Yeah, then you may continue.
So you made also the point that, like Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, he said, it's just enough if we understand that we are eternal servants of Krishna. So actually
Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but all acharyas will say that. All acharyas will say that. Yeah, so this is the essence of knowledge.
This is the essence.
To understand that we are eternal servants of Krishna. Yeah.
So actually, in that meaning, it's also said that, for example.
But to understand that, we may read or imbibe to see how the totality of that. Then Bhagavad Gita describes Ishvara, Jiva, Kala, Karma, Prakriti, Srimad. By studying Prabhupada's books and studying the lives of the acharyas, we realize the profundity of that. It's not just like some kind of slogan, like Jesus is the way, the life, and the truth, and no one goes to the Father but through Him. And it's just some kind of slogan. He said, that's it, that's the whole thing. And then what does it mean? What does it mean, the life, the way, the truth? And it's not defined, it's just a slogan. But when we say that, we simply have to understand that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and I am His servant. It's not just a slogan that or like Jotto Toto Pot in modern Mayavad nursery rhyme nonsense. It's not just some kind of slogan, but we should understand the profundity of that also. What does it mean to understand that Krishna is the Supreme Lord? Then we have to study the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. What does it mean that I'm His servant? So it's all knowledge is condensed into this, but again it's vast. How do we practically apply that in our lives? What does it mean in different, how to apply that in various circumstances? So it's very simple. It's very simple. But there's a vastness underlying it also. Yeah.
So, for example, when we can see like many acharyas or many learned persons who were very exalted and they understood the point, like being the servant of Krishna, but they still continue to develop more knowledge. As I understand, is like chanting Mahamantra. Acquiring knowledge is like purifying oneself.
Yeah.
And, So
even though they understood that everything is I am Krishna, I am Krishna's, not I am Krishna, I am Krishna's, that's all there is to be understood, but still they study more and acquire more knowledge. Yes, that's purifying. Also, a devotee acquires knowledge about Krishna because he's fascinated by Krishna, he loves Krishna, he wants to know more and more about Krishna. And also for preaching Krishna consciousness. It's required to understand the philosophical presentation. So it's also a service to Krishna. It's not that one says, okay, all right, I understood, I'm so servant to Krishna, okay, no more need to study. In one sense that's true. But if one understands that, then he will also understand that one of the services is to Krishna, as did the 6 Goswamis, for example. They studied the Shastras and presented them for the benefit of human society. So it's also a service to Krishna. So it really depends on the attitude, which is the whole point of these 5 verses.
For example, and we have that too because it said also that Krishna, actually, for example, if you take the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita is the incarnation of Krishna in the writing form, right?
Yeah, Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita are Krishna in literary
form. So if
form.
you're reading it or studying it, actually you're associating with Krishna, like chanting Mahamantra.
We associate with Krishna by studying these books, yeah. But there's also a quality here. In one sense, we're always associating with Krishna, in one sense, because we can never be separate from Krishna. We can never be totally divorced from Krishna, because everything is Krishna's energy. We're also part and parcel of Krishna. So in one sense, we're always associated with Krishna. But then in a specific sense, we're associated with Krishna by studying Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, if we have the motive to do so. Otherwise, some people, by reading Bhagavad Gita, they go further away from Krishna, because they have an attitude of envy toward Krishna. That's why Krishna says at the very end, this Bhagavad Gita should not be explained to persons who are envious of me, who are not engaged in devotional service, who are not austere. So yes, we do associate with Krishna if we have the attitude to do so. Of course, it's very purifying to study Shastra. Yeah, please.
Maharaj, all these qualities that you mentioned, actually what Krishna is sharing also, and you elaborated, I feel a little confused from the aspect that we say that for chanting nicely, we need to have humility. At the same time, we say that when we chant nicely, humility will come, because it's an anarchy.
To chant nicely, we should have humility, and without humility, we can't chant properly.
Yeah. So
how to understand this? Well, it's with so many things. It's if we chant, then we become more inclined to hear. If we hear, we become more inclined to chant. So they go on simultaneously. Faith. Someone just asked me that question yesterday at the end of the class. Is that we have faith. Shraddha labhate jnanam. Faith gives rise to knowledge. One whose faith gets knowledge, but by getting knowledge, our faith becomes stronger. So they're both concomitant. Without humility, we can't chant. We can't even begin. It's humility to chant, to accept that Krishna is superior to me. I should chant His name. Instead, if we think Krishna should chant my name, then there's no humility. So humility, it's humility. But at the same time, we have so many, we have mountains of pride. So, but chanting, Chaito Darpana Marjan, that will help to remove, that will clean the heart. So, yeah, we have to have humility to chant, we're actually chanting, then all good qualities will come from that also. So they're inextricable. Yeah, someone else want to ask something? No, there was a question. No, it's got cancelled. Anyone else? Yeah.
So, also want to go to like for my also to. So that means that if we have this right attitude on this knowledge, like for example, if we say for better preaching, we study more, or that we want to sit with Krishna to read books more. So this is right. Like this
the right attitude to study is for service, so that we can increase our bhakti, and then, everything should be done to increase our devotional attitude and devotional service.
At this point, like for example, if we say,
and also we shouldn't think that I'll read so much and then I'll understand Krishna. It's not like some material subject. If I study hard enough, I'll become an expert chemist or physicist or whatever. It's not exactly like that. It works by mercy. But we attract the mercy by our humble serving attitude. We come to this, actually we should approach this knowledge with great humility. The materialistic mentality is to want to become the master of everything, just like become a master of, MSc, Master of Science, Master of Arts. But in the Bhakti Shastra you become the servant. So this knowledge is so much greater than us. It's not something for us to think that we can master it. But rather if we can become the servant of this knowledge, that from the very beginning that should be our attitude. Approaching Krishna and Krishna consciousness means we're coming. We should understand we're coming in contact with a whole phenomenon far, far greater than me, and we should approach with great awe. Bandho mui shabodhana mate. They say that. We approach prayerfully and carefully. Not that I become the master. So, you did have a question. Bring it up again.
Ja, der was Vergleichung gesagt bei was Schlimmes passiert ist. So spoke about tolerate when something bad happens and something good happens.
Yeah, tolerate when something bad happens and tolerate when something good happens.
So
generally we hear about tolerating bad things, but we don't hear about tolerating good things.
Wenn etwas mir etwas Gutes passiert, dann heute nicht das pushen, was am Leser if something good happens, I'm happy about it, and because I see Krishna arranged it, that's something good.
Yeah, we may see Krishna arrange something good. Become grateful for it. Yeah, that can also be. Like Sudama Vipra, he was in great poverty, but he was happy in Krishna consciousness. And although he didn't particularly desire it, Krishna awarded him great wealth. But he remained the same person. He thought, Krishna has given me so much wealth. So previously I was serving Krishna in poverty. Now I can serve him in wealth, so he's not particularly specified, but we can understand that he must have arranged for festivals and opulent service of the deity. And so he used that opulence for serving Krishna. But he remained the same. He saw, this is Krishna's gift to me, I should use it in Krishna's service. He didn't change his attitude of service. He didn't think, now I got all this opportunity. Before I had nothing else to do. I didn't have any money, so I didn't have anything else to do but chant Hare Krishna anyway. But now I can enjoy myself, so forget about chanting Hare Krishna. Some people, that happens. That happens. It's a test. Difficulties are a test from Krishna, and if Krishna gives us some material facility, that can be a test also. And maybe that's a more difficult test. We often see our movement goes on better when there are difficulties. And when there's money and acceptance by the public, then it seems our devotees are more likely to get in Maya. Money is a great test for a devotee. It's very easy to misuse. You think, then why should I set all this austerity, rising early and all this, I can stick the money in my pocket and go away. They can't do anything to me. I can live comfortably. Be careful. Now you don't have that facility. Maybe you will in future. So, shall we chant Hare Krishna for a few minutes, or you all want to run away? No?
We will chant.
Okay, please chant.